and welcome to the Learning to See podcast. I'm Jen Allward, your host, and today I'm excited to introduce you to my friend Danica Thurber, founder of Project Grief Art, artist, author, therapeutic life coach, art ministry director at the Vineyard Church in Boise, mother and wife. She's a talented and busy lady. Today we're talking about anticipatory grief, a topic no one talks much about, but is a very real thing that you've likely experienced but perhaps not had a name for. It's a discussion we had back in 2020 on Instagram Live, so please be patient with the glitches as Danica walks us through a really helpful art activity. At the end, I'll also give you a little sneak peek of her brand new 2024 Therapeutic Art Grief course and workbook. You can find the link to that and other helpful resources in our show notes, including links to her ebook, which is free on October 21st in honor of her dad, and links to join our Learning to See studio membership on Patreon. Okay, are you ready? Let's jump on in and learn to see how art can help us make sense of our grief. Here's Danica with Project Grief. Let's see if we can get her on here. Yay! You're here! Hi, thanks for your patience. I'm so excited we got this on. So since I rambled for a while already, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your story and your ministry and your book, and then I'm really excited about our art project. I've got my pen and paper here.
Perfect.
Decided to go simple.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so we'll do an art project. Well, it's really just a doodle project, just to keep it simple. So grab a pen and paper. I'm going to do it on my whiteboard so I can hold it up. Yeah, as Jen was introducing me, I'm Danica Thurber, and my husband and I founded a thing called Project Grief, and we're talking today about anticipatory grief. And yeah, my background is as a artist and as a therapeutic art life coach. So slightly different from Jen, but definitely in the same heart and vein. So I believe that because loss and grief take us beyond words, we have to go beyond words to heal. It just makes sense. And so that's where art comes in. My experience with loss starts pretty early on. I lost my dad at 12, as you know, Jen, and it was a traumatic loss because he was 46 and it was a massive heart attack. That grief was crazy, shock and denial and all kinds of crazy things. And just a year later, my grandma, who we were very close with, she just lived 2 minutes down the street, she was diagnosed with a rare lymphoma. So knowing that, we knew that her time was limited, and her body started to deteriorate pretty quickly. And within a year and a half, we lost her. And having just experienced grief, I had the chance to really notice how different it was with my grandma. It was like we were grieving while she was still with us. And her death became a relief because of the pain that she was in. Whereas my dad, the death was a shock. It was totally different. And so in my exploration of grief and loss and leading people through, I started to really, just address different grief issues. And I think this is a big one that we don't often talk about.
Right.
As the holidays come, right?
It's a big time to address that again.
Yeah. The anxiety of, maybe this is the first holidays without your loved one. Maybe you're anticipating just the other losses, like loss of income, during the winter, slow months. Maybe loss of the traditions that you've always had that are totally different now because of COVID. That's anticipatory grief too. You're anticipating a loss. And so that's what we're talking about today. It's been quite a while now. And so it's cool to be not on the other side, because there's not an other side of grief or loss, but to be the helper now, helping people work through their grief. That's not really an other side. It's more of a co-journey person.
Yeah.
It's cool to be able to go back to that space with healing, and with new perspective to be able to help others.
It sort of adds an extra purpose to it.
It does, yeah.
That you can kind of pay it forward, or be able to help somebody through something that you might not have had the help through that you wish you would have.
Exactly. Yeah. And Jen mentioned this, but
yeah.
had our first children's book published, and it's about my story with my grandma. So this little girl, she's 8 years old, and she's going through the loss of her grandma. You're watching grandma slowly lose the bodily functions, and just experiencing it through her eyes. So it's facing loss and finding encouragement. I think it's a weird pairing, but I think it's a helpful perspective for people going through loss, and especially.
And you wrote and illustrated that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm an artist.
Awesome.
Yeah. And for anyone without an artistic streak like us, I just want to encourage you too that when we do grief art, it's different than fine art. So when I'm wearing my fine art hat, I'm making something professional looking. It's always polished. It has lots of layers. It takes a long time, and its value is in the value that people assign it, if they're commissioning or purchasing it. But when I'm doing grief art, I'm wearing a different hat. I'm focused on the process, exactly, helping people through the process or doing the process myself. And so grief art is different because it doesn't have to look beautiful at the end. And I like to say, if it turns out ugly or messy, good job. You've just expressed what grief looks like.
Right.
So with that, I mean, you're free to participate in this activity as you have, but I think it's really freeing to know that it's about the process you go through, not the final product when we're doing grief art. All right, let's go ahead. You ready, Jen?
Yeah, I'm ready. Paper and pen.
Okay, cool. I think I'll do this because I'm doing like a boat in a river in a canoe kind of thing. So, horizontal is good. Let's start with a banana shape because that's a canoe. Do like this. That's a horrible banana, but it's about the process, not the product. And then we got the little posts of the canoe. So we got that like up, down, up, down.
Oh, like the frame of it?
Yeah, that. I'm not official. And then we've got the water. So you can do the like little wave thing do. And then let's do the other side of the river, like that. Yay, it's a canoe in a river. So our first stop on our expedition is to look at the water. So in the water, I'll just give you like a couple minutes, or probably just a minute, to write or draw what you're feeling. So especially right now, I'm going to start with, I'll just talk through this and you can write your own or wherever you're at. I'm just going to talk through it. So I'm going to put anxiety because that's all about anticipatory grief, holidays, busy season right now at work. I feel like just making a scribble. That's like stress. Sometimes a scribble symbolizes grief because I'm kind of like balled up inside myself. I'm feeling sad. Honestly, the things that our nation's going through in the U.S. here, and watching friends and people that I know suffer. It's a lot of sadness right now. I'm thinking about my grandma and grandpa who love the holidays. Sometimes I feel angry, so I'll put anger in there. The injustice of it all, why did I have to lose my dad when I was little? Why did grandma have to pass? So can you share maybe one of your emotions, Jen, that you put in here?
Sure. I was more coming up with like thoughts. I can remember when my grandpa was dying, and I wanted to isolate. I didn't know what to do. I was thinking like, why him? And now like one of my dogs died, and just really wanting to. I knew she was dying, and I could make sure I got to the lake in time. And it was really hard to go to the lake, but it was like, yes, I want one more really good memory. So some of it was I was a little more intentional.
Good. Yeah, wanting to be present. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like negative.
Yeah.
It's like seize the moment,
Yeah.
Like, because you don't know how many you got left.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So what we do with this, the reason why we put the emotions in the water is that emotions are a state of being that we can pass through. And once, like, seize the moment, maybe we don't want to pass through. But that's okay. Like, we can pass through and we can pass through again. Because you might not always want to seize the moment. You want to just sometimes speed through, just be done, you know. So we're going to give some movement to the water. So from each word or thought you've got, do a little trail behind it to show that it's moving. So we have to begin, you know, where we're at, and that's where we're at in the water. Okay, so I'm going to move to the inside of the boat. So in the inside of the boat, what we're going to write is questions we're thinking through, like, what am I going to do when, you know, that situation you're anticipating. You're going to write burdens, responsibilities you have, like, make sure the dog gets fed every day, you know, like whatever, you know, the things that are weighing on your mind. You can think of them as cargo.
Would some of that cargo, like having to make decisions, like if you're the main caretaker?
Totally. Yeah, oftentimes with a loss that you're anticipating, there's going to be a change of roles. Who's the financial bringer in the house? I don't know how you'd say that. Who's taking care? Yeah, transferring roles for kids and all kinds of things.
Yeah, or medical decisions and.
Exactly. Yeah. So questions you're thinking through, burdens you feel, responsibilities. Questions, responsibilities. Might be stresses too, you know. Stresses, burdens.
It's interesting writing down some of the cargo. It makes me think of the other emotions that need to go back in the river. So I keep finding myself adding it back. Going back and going, oh yeah, that was one of my other emotions.
When you think of the thing, you're like, oh, that's how I feel about the thing. Yeah, exactly. Or you can look, you know, if you're kind of stumped, you can look at the emotions and be like, okay, what's causing me overwhelm right now? And again, anyone who's just joined, we're talking about anticipatory grief. So maybe the loss hasn't happened yet, or maybe it has, you know, and you're anticipating a life without your loved one. So that's still anticipatory grief, stress, anxiety, all of those things. That's what we're talking about today. So we begin with the river by identifying what we're feeling right now, because emotions are things we pass through, you know, and they carry us too. So we're writing the emotions in the river, little ripples to show their movement. And then in the boat, we're showing our responsibilities, our burdens, our questions, our stresses. And that represents cargo. Yeah, Sarah says life and career changes. That's big. Yeah. Oftentimes, a loss means a lot of other changes. Those are called secondary losses because they're not the original loss, you know, the death of the loved one. That's the big one. But the secondary stuff is the stuff that had to change when it was attached to it. It is true. You can grieve before that person's gone. I certainly have experienced that myself. Have you too, Jen?
I get asked that all the time with clients. So I'm like, yeah, this is the grief before the loss is sometimes, I think, harder because it's so mixed. It's part of you wants it to be done and then you feel bad.
We're on the boat. We've got cargo. Let's pretend that there's rapids up ahead in our little river metaphor. That's the anticipation, the thing that we're anticipating, right? The loss, the holidays, whatever event is up ahead. In order to survive those rapids, we got to lighten our load. That's how we're not going to sink when we go into the rapids. So I want you to look at every single piece of cargo that you wrote down and see, is there anything at all that I can throw overboard? So there might be maybe parts of it, like I need to, like a job change. You know, Sarah mentioned that. Maybe I can't throw away all the job change. Like, I need a job. But maybe I can postpone it till January. So, like, the stress of finding a job now is what's stressing me, but maybe I can wait and live off of my savings or unemployment, whatever, until January. So, you know, it might just be partly tossing over the cargo, not entirely. So think through each of those items. What can you toss over? And some things legitimately do need to stay in your boat. We're not tossing everything overboard because there's things we'll need on the other side of those rapids in order to survive. And we ourselves are not jumping out of the boat either. So we need stuff to sustain us. But what can we do to lighten the cloud? That's what we're talking about.
When you say you could dump it overboard, do you mean some of it could be postponed, or it could be like delegated to somebody else? Or maybe you don't really have to clean the dishes tonight? Cool.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Dumping it overboard might not look like never ever doing it. It's more like dumping the load that's on your shoulders, you know. This isn't an actual boat. It's actually living here. And here.
Lots lives right there. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got the ocean or the river of our emotions, what we're feeling. We've got the boat and the things that are creating the stress or the loading the burden. We've got the rapids up ahead. We're like, wow. You know what would make me feel better in this situation? An oar.
That could be awesome.
Right here would feel so out of control, right? The river is what's driving all of this direction. And so no wonder we feel stressed and fearful and scared and angry and all of those things. We're floating on the rivers of our emotions. We've got no way to stop it or to change direction or to change pace. So let's draw in an oar. So I've got the magic whiteboard, so I can just like clear some space. So wherever you've got space, or just draw it on top of other things. It's all about the process, right? So I'm going to do like a little line here. I'll show you how we can draw an oar if you want. So an oar looks just like a spoon. It's got a long handle, and then like this, or a shovel. And again, I'm not a fisherman, so it might be wrong.
The important thing is, you know, it's an oar, right? Doesn't matter if it looks like one to somebody else or not.
Exactly. So the oar is the symbol of direction and strength. So I'll write that direction because it, you know, you can paddle to turn yourself, and strength, so it's the fuel. You can also say energy. So that's what takes you forward. River takes you forward too, but the oar is the power behind it. So that leads us to think, what in my life gives me direction? And what in my life gives me strength and energy? Because I'll bet if you're really battling anticipatory grief right now, your oar is probably either weak or non-existent. Or maybe you just have one and you need two, you know? We can always put another one in there behind the boat. So what in your life gives you direction? What in your life gives you strength and energy? So I'll give you a second to think about that, and I'll also talk through this one. In terms of direction, I find a lot of direction in my spirituality. So for me, that's praying, reading scripture, talking to people at church, in my community. Maybe if you're not a person of faith, you might find that from a really good group of friends, from meditation, books. You know, there's some really good books out there. I just saw you post one about Advent coming. There's so many people who've walked down these paths. We can read what they've said and get some direction for our lives as well.
Yeah, so for me, it's like going for a walk in the woods or being alone. Even sometimes I feel like a distracting thing, like watching a silly movie or a really sappy movie that just totally takes me like away from everything I'm trying to carry. Gives me a chance to kind of recharge my batteries and get a fresh look at something.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a perspective changer.
Yeah,
that's what you're looking at. Exactly. Yeah. And I think some of those things you mentioned too would be sources of strength and energy, like clearing your mind through nature walks and things. I love doing that without headphones. I challenge our people listening to try it without headphones. It's sometimes hard if you're used to like silencing yourself with noise. But that that quietness, you know, that's where you get direct and strength.
My grief connection said naps.
Amen.
A little extra self-care. Yeah.
Such a good source of strength and energy. So we've got, the river of our emotions, the stuff in our boat, which is the cargo, and the oar is our strength and energy and direction. So if we've done all of these steps, I'll bet you we're so much better equipped to face the rapids that are coming down the river. It doesn't take away the rapids. And I think that's important to realize, you know, there's so much stuff that we can't control, but we can control what's in our boat and what's in our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Even the emotions that we're feeling, we can't always control, you know? And so we've got to learn to ride the waves. There's a word called equanimous.
That's a good word for the day.
Words of the year. Yeah, it's equanimous is being able to weather the ups and downs. And so in that I've kind of repeated for myself is I am equanimous, able to weather many storms. So it's just a helpful idea that I can't take away the storms, I can't run from all the storms, but I can weather them, and I can weather them well, and I can help others learn to weather them well. So that's our word for the day, equanimous. So we face anticipatory grief. Yeah.
Great.
So I guess I'll finish by sharing a little bit of my book. Yeah. This book is really about my experience with anticipatory grief. It's about me as a child going through the grief of losing my grandma and watching her die. So it's a hard book, but I think it's an important book because, you know, there's a lot of grief resources out there, luckily now, but this is the one that I wish I could have had when I was going through the loss of my grandma, because it shows this slow loss of body function, and it doesn't sweep it under the rug with euphemisms, you know, oh, grandma's in heaven now, you know, like all the things that we want to do to protect the children. So it doesn't do that. It shows it honestly, but it shows it in an age-appropriate, helpful way that helps the child understand how they face loss. How Lulu makes this project for her grandma. It's she embarks on basically an adventure to find how she can encourage her. And she does that because she learns a new word, encouragement, which means giving hope to someone and helping them on the inside, helping strengthen somebody on the inside. And at the end, there's instructions to make your own encouragement flowers, the same ones that Lulu makes in the book. So that gives kids and adults a tangible way to work through that encouragement. Though Lulu gives her gift to her grandma and her grandma passes, she ends up finding encouragement by remembering grandma through that gift that she made her. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. And I hope that it would be a really amazing resource for other kids who are going through this right now. My heart goes out to the little ones and the older ones who are going through anticipatory grief right now. So I hope this book can be an encouragement to them. And you can find it on my profile. That's me.
Awesome. And it's so nice to have a book when you're going through something hard like that, because you get the snuggle read a book time, and you can talk about harder issues because it's introduced as a character's issue. And really cool. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I will put links to all of your sites and everything in the comments to this.
Thanks so much, Jen. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Yeah, bye.
Bye.
And as promised, a little sneak peek into Danica's new therapeutic art course to help you process grief. It is really well done. She's got 10 different projects, videos where she explains it so gently and encouragingly and helps you get started from that stuck point of not even having energy or ideas in your brain for what you could possibly do with all this grief in you. She has projects that are inspired by famous artists. She shares parts of her own story. She takes you through ways to cherish and savor the memories, to feel the pain, to see it in slightly different ways, to acknowledge how this affects your identity. And then she also takes you beyond and helps you think beyond yourself in making sympathy cards that come from a place of pain and comfort that can then transform someone else's grief. And I think if you look at her work, you're also going to notice that she has personally processed her grief through her art. And if you take the course, you're going to see several pieces that are in her gallery as professional kind of formal pieces of art that she's really developed, and how they also inspired or were inspired by some of these projects that she has kind of pared down to the essentials that we can do in her course. And I hope you'll check it out on her Etsy store and be inspired and be encouraged and be comforted. I'm just going to end with her quote about what a grief artist is. Grief artists are people who take the pain of life and transform it into tools and lessons that help them to continually discover a new identity, to love deeper, to be more present, to better work through difficulties as they come. So Lord, I pray for everyone watching this video and everyone who takes this course by Danica, that they will be blessed with comfort and transformation, to see that you are with them in the pain, that you redeem and transform it, that you comfort them so that they may also better comfort others. Let us continue this process that you have initiated so that when new hard things come, we will face them better with a hope, with the knowledge of the living hope that this pain that we are in right now is not the end. Thank you for the ways you comfort us. Thank you for understanding the pain, and thank you for giving us something beyond the pain.